Bar for Bar album reviews. Dr. Destruction, Planetory Destruction. Planetory Destruction is the debut project from Bobby Boy Records' latest signee, Dr. Destruction. According to Logic, he met Doc D 3 years ago in Chicago, and he claimed to be from the year 2097. Since then, they've been working on music and finally released a project on January 22nd, 2021. This project follows Doc D as he travels through the universe, destroying everything in his path, all because his girlfriend Sharon broke up with him. In reality, though, this is just Logic's alter ego that's taken heavy influence from the late MF Doom. This project comes in at a total runtime of about 40 to 45 minutes with 17 tracks, so it's on the longer end of most albums, but it's also about right considering most of Logic's releases are right around that time. There are also 4 skits aside from the intro to break up the album a little bit as well, and it makes the experience flow more like a story. Like I previously mentioned, this project takes a lot of influence from MF Doom, mostly in terms of sampling and production, as well as Logic changing his voice. I won't go as far as saying that he used the same flow, delivery, and subject matter as Doom on every track, but the influence is still there and it's definitely noticeable. The album starts off with an intro that's really just to set the tone. It is also the first place that we see the inspiration from Doom, where Logic samples Funky Fanfare by Keith Mansfield. This is the same sample used on the Danger Doom album for the track Old School Rules. So I guess it was more of a Danger Mouse sample. But it also samples the New Style by the Beastie Boys, which works really well. The thing that I'll probably mention quite often in this review, though, is the production, because it's really solid. The short verse that we get here is nothing to really write home about, but if you're just listening for the sound and delivery, it's not too bad, and definitely sounds Doom-esque. In fact, if anything, it's more of a Victor Vaughn emulation than Doom proper. Towards the end of the track, we get 2 fitting excerpts from Die Hard with a Vengeance and Back to the Future. The former talks about education, respect, and power, whereas the latter is more in reference to what Logic said about Doc D using Doc Brown's DeLorean to time travel. This then brings us to the first track proper, Planetory Destruction, featuring Big Limbo. This track really just feels like it's meant to show off lyrical ability, or at least that was the attempt. Doc D's verse starts off a little rough, which makes sense if him saying straight off the cuff is meant to let us know that this is like a freestyle. Sometimes, it takes a few bars to really go off, so I get it. Once things start going, though, it's not too bad. There's multiple Wu-Tang references here, ranging from a call-out to Capadonna's verse on Ghostface's Winter Wars with Smoke a Blunt, dial 917-1604-9311, and you can get a long dick hip-hop affection, to calling himself the modern day Abbott, which is another name that RZA has used in the past. Throughout the song, we get cuts from the host of Cosmos 105.7 to start building the story up, which probably could have been done solely in the skits, but it's fine. At the end of the track, we see another of Logic's inspirations in the form of an excerpt from Pulp Fiction, which is really just meant to add to the Doc D persona. Better Text Back is one of the shorter songs on the project, and it again really just feels like it's world building for Doc D. It kind of sounds like he's taking further inspiration from the Danger Doom project in the sense that the characters introduced here kind of sound like Zorak and Brack from Space Ghost, both of whom were prominently featured on the Danger Doom album, but it really could be any sort of alien species if this is meant to be in the future. Lyrically and production-wise, this is one of the weaker tracks on the album. I didn't mind the beat before and after his verse, but still not the greatest so far. The next track, Green Juices, is another of the shorter tracks here. The single verse is flanked by excerpts from Men in Black, which in my mind is to remind us that we're likely not alone in the universe. This inclusion makes sense if we were to assume the album is from the future, where it's possible that we have confirmation of extraterrestrial life. This title can also be an allusion to the idea that alien blood is green, hence green juices. However, it could just be talking about green juices made of vegetables that Doc D mentions that he should drink more of. The production and delivery from Doc D are pretty solid here, although it does really just feel like a Logic song with voice modification, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Now we get to the first of 4 skits from Cosmos 105.7. Here we get a bit of a look at why Doc D sounds like this. It turns out that he wanted to sound like this to make himself sound like a villain. So he cut out his voice box and replaced it with a vocoder to emulate any voice he wants, which is also why, even though this is meant to be 70 years in the future, we have features from rappers that are around today. It's a cool concept, for sure, but I don't think that's how vocoders work. Next we have Double Sample, which is really just an instrumental track with samples from Gil Scott-Heron and the Supreme Jubilees. To me, this really felt like a follow-up to the radio skit that we got on the previous track, so there's not much to say or add here, but the production is really smooth and enjoyable. With backstory, we get a bit of a backstory to Doc D. The production is pretty solid and either samples or takes inspiration from Doom's Saffron beat, which is most known for being the beat on the track Doomsday. This track, as well as the following skit, expand on Doc D's reasoning for destroying the universe, which is ultimately due to his girlfriend Sharon breaking up with him. At the end of this track, we do get more information on who Doc D is, and it's from Vorgon. He lets the listeners know that Doc D is a creation of Dr. Omega. According to Logic during the live stream of the album, Dr. Omega went and created clones of himself as kids to see if they'd eventually become strong enough to destroy him. And Vorgon is basically just putting out a hit on Doc D to stop him from doing so. The second Cosmos skit basically just reiterates the point of Doc D's rampage, making light of people who don't pay attention to what song lyrics are saying. Back to the Basement is meant to be a crew cut, with everyone from Rat Pack involved, including Silas. I don't care if the song is good. Having Silas hide behind a different name, Tony Tone in this case, and still working with him after the multiple allegations of him preying on minors and just kind of being an overall shitty person is a bad look. Thankfully, this is a free album and no one should be making money off of it, so if you do enjoy the song, you don't have to worry about him getting money from streaming it. Aside from that though, the song is fine, and I like the use of the 8 Million Stories sample from A Tribe Called Quest. Next up is Outer Space Gang featuring Like and J Mars. With Doc D's verse, we get even more confirmation that he's taking influence from Doom with the line, "I'm MF Doom meets El DeBarge." We also get the other influences from this album with Like's verse, where he says the year is 3033, which seems to be an allusion to Deltron 3030. The references to Doom continue with J Mars's verse, where he says, "Bring in Doom like Doomlay." The song is a bit better than the other solo tracks that we've gotten thus far, and I'm pretty sure that's due to him having featured artists here, really just kind of pushing him to do more. Butt Ass Naked is a song. I don't care for it, but I mean, if you like it, sure. It's pretty straightforward in terms of what's being conveyed here, and I don't think I need to explain, but it also has Marc Rebillet on it, so that's fun. Ready Player Gun features Like and Buddy and plays on the title of Ready Player One. It really just feels like the back half of this album drops the Doom influence quite a bit, even in the voice change. Doc D's voice isn't as muffled and raspy as it was on the first half of the album, but that might just be me. Really, the song is just, each person rapping about how good they are, at least Like and Doc D did. Buddy's verse is just a little bit different, and it's more chill. That follows up on the last few bars that Doc D had about women in his verse. The third Cosmos skit doesn't really add much to Doc D specifically, but is more meant for world building, I feel. Here we have someone who called into the radio show and is talking about how he was having sex with his cousin as the planet exploded. It was just kind of weird and was probably just to poke fun at people who call in to radio stations and just share a little bit too much information. 20 Million Woolongs is a track that makes reference to Cowboy Bebop and follows two bounty hunters, JT and Gordax, as they're getting ready to take out Doc D. As we approach the end of the skit, we learn that there's hella other bounty hunters out there after Doc D. There's no verse from Doc here, but we do get to hear from Punch, and it's pretty solid as he flows smoothly over this jazzy instrumental. It also sounded like Punch was meant to be one of the bounty hunters here. Things start to wrap up with the track Bounty Law, featuring Del the Funky Homo Sapien and Ghostface Killah. The track starts off with an intro from Dr. Omega and Vorgon, where it seems that Dr. Omega is pleased with what Doc D is doing. The verses here are also really solid, and can almost be used as evidence that having features forces Logic to do more and sound better on tracks. His verse here is really solid, as are the ones from Dell and Ghost. What's a little interesting to me is that Logic got Ghost for this track. I'm sure he told him in the intention of the project, but since we never got Doomstarks, it's just kind of sad. Nothing really important to point out with that. I'm just sad that we didn't get Doomstarks before Doom passed. Also, the vocal effect on Ghostface was a nice touch and it made it fit in with the overall sound a little bit more. At the end of this track, we hear more from the bounty hunters claiming that Doc D is just a fake villain, which is kind of funny because he is just a clone of Dr. Omega, who's maybe the real villain. Also, outside of the story that's created by this album, he really is a fake villain because he's not the actual villain that he got inspiration from. The final Cosmo skid brings a new guest to the radio show, Sharon. It's pretty funny and just continues to add to the character of Doc D, or Clarence, I guess. At the end of the skit, Doc D vows to continue his rampage until all the Sharons are dead. The album ends with the track Death of Destruction. Here we have all the bounty hunters that were going after Doc D finally catching up to him, and they just blow his ship up. Among the explosions, though, there appears to be another one in space and time, allowing Doc D to seemingly escape. The sampling and production here makes it a really fun ending to the project for sure. Overall, this project was okay. The main thing that'll bring me back to it would be the production, because everything else was just right. Another highlight for me was the features that we got towards the end of the project. And with all the features, it really just feels like Logic told them what the sound of the album would be, and that it would be like a mixture of MF Doom and Deltron. At least that's what it sounds like, since a few of them mention both entities. Aside from my feelings about Silas being included on this project, the other meh thing for me were most of the verses from Doc D. Not that they were bad, they were just underwhelming. As far as how I feel about this potentially being a Doom tribute, I'm still not sure. The character production and voice definitely took inspiration from him at first, but as the project continued, it really started to come apart and became a Logic project. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's more of an interesting note. I was definitely upset at the idea that Logic would capitalize on Doom's recent passing by putting this out so close to the news without him saying it was a tribute. However, with the assumption that this is a Doom tribute, or at least heavily influenced or inspired by the villain, and at least that if that was his goal with the project, it's not that upsetting. I do wish that we got a bit more character-focused verses and movie excerpts from Doc D, like we got in the first half of the tape, but it's a free project, so who am I to complain about things like that? My favorite tracks here are Planetory Destruction, Green Juice's Backstory, Outer Space Gang, and Bounty Law. I'm definitely not mad at the album, or at least not as upset as I was when it first came out, so that's good. If Logic wanted to do something with Doc D in the future, I would definitely be interested. Like I said when the news first came out, alter egos aren't something that are delegated only to Doom. Anyone can do it, so if Logic wants to continue doing stuff with Doc D or even another persona, by all means, go for it. That's all I got for this review though. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this project and what your favorite tracks are. Also, like and subscribe if you want to see more content and reviews like this. Thank you for watching, and please stay safe out there.